All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. How is everyone doing today on Wonderful Wednesday? Yes, it is that time yet again for Conversation for Humanity today on Wonderful Wednesday. And of course, our great guest already is here, Christine West, all the way from the last frontier, the great state of Alaska. She is here. So, Christine, good afternoon, ma'am. How are you doing today on Wonderful Wednesday?
Awesome. And it's still morning in Alaska. So good morning, good afternoon to the audience, no matter where
That
you
it
are.
is. You're like, what, 8 hours behind me?
No, well, it feels like it, but you know what? We'll go with that. Like life is all about perception.
Wow. Because it is, you said 11 a.m. So it's not that bad. It's almost like almost 6 hours. Yeah, so it's not
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
But Christine, thank you so much for showing up today and wanting to share your story and everything. But I got to say, first and foremost, people like you, I get a thrill of getting to hear their stories because I truly believe a story is really, truly not only monumental in scope, but it can really inspire us to do so many things. And I've said many times, and I'll say it again, that conversation can really call us to act when we just allow it to occur. So, again, on that note, Christine, thank you so much for coming to share your story with us today on Conversation for Humanity. So, please come share your story. We would love to hear it.
Wow. Okay. Well, where do I begin? Okay. If you want to hear my story, I got lots of stories. I'm a good storyteller. But I believe the story that I'm going to share with this audience is, as Chris mentioned, I live in Alaska. Was I born here? No. Okay, so I'm going to just share a story about, I believe that many people, depending on where you're at in your life, may relate to this. Is I get asked all the time, why did you move to Alaska? How did somebody from Chicago move to Alaska? And I'm going to share with folks that I never, ever dreamt about Alaska. I mean, I knew in school that it was part of the 50 states, so it's not another country, folks. And I grew up in a world where in Chicago, where, I had a mom and dad, I had a family, and we just went through the motions of things. Now, what's interesting is in my upbringing, it wasn't always easy. I mean, I had young parents. They weren't always the best about their communication skills. I mean, they went to work. I mean, they provided for us. They gave us the basics. But as far as their interactions with each other, they weren't the healthiest. So there was two emotions in my household. They were called loud and soft. And the loud was like, rah, loud. And the soft was just like la, 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 and nothing in between. So anyways, when you go through life like this, and then you get out of that environment and you start working, and then you get like your buttons get pushed because something's in disagreement with you. The only two things you know how to do is not because you're consciously thinking about it, is that all of a sudden you go at people, and that's not exactly the best thing to do. So for me, what I realized in my first career, which I worked in corporate, was that when I got upset about something, I never really understood how to have those smooth conversations and the gamut of different emotions that are required for human connection. It was either I was a rock star doing what I was there to do, acing things, or I got upset about something and then I was that explosive, like rah, and then I would burn the bridge and I would job hop and go somewhere else and rinse and repeat. So how did I get to Alaska? What does that have to do with Alaska? Well, the thing is in 2001, I got to a place where the corporation I was working for, I realized, I woke up one day when the tech stocks went and I was no longer rich on paper. And everybody was chaotic and like rah, towards each other. Your friends of yesterday are no longer your friends of today, because now all of a sudden we gotta, shoot somebody and blame somebody for something because you're trying to hold on to some illusion that's on paper. And anyways, I realized in that moment I was no longer buying into the Kool-Aid that I bought into of what I was selling, what I was doing, how I was existing. And then things got worse for me, because as I'm going through this mindset and this shift and this awakening, which I couldn't articulate it back then like I am now, was all of a sudden I realized I spent so much time at work, gave so much, is almost that the corporation, my job was almost like my God. It was like, something that was like my source of everything, all of a sudden betrayed me. And I didn't know how to handle that. And then all of a sudden my home life, I realized that my home life betrayed me, and everything around me felt as though I was betrayed by it. And I didn't know what to do because I didn't know. I didn't remember. I was conditioned loud or soft emotion. I did not know all these other things are flooding through me. And I didn't know about things called coaches. I mean, this is 2001. Maybe there were coaches. I just didn't know about them. If you introduced a word to me called therapist, I'd be like, I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm not telling those people anything. They're not going to tell me what's wrong with me. And anyways, so I go to a medical doctor and I say to the medical doctor, what do I got to do to tell you? What story do I need to tell you so that I get work? I protect my job and I get some time off work because I had to figure this out because I was the great strategic avoider. And so the doctor said to me, well, do you got anxiety? Well, back then, I didn't know what that word meant. And so I just had a question was, well, by me saying I have anxiety, does that give me a note? And I said, you tell me the words that I have to say yes to get you to write the note. And she says, well, anxiety will get me to write the note. Anxiety and stress. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I got it. I'm sure I did have it. I just didn't know how to sit in those types of emotions. And so I get my note and I get these anti-anxiety meds and I do what I do best. I go home, I go sit on the sofa, I pop my pills and I drink my wine and stare out the window. And nothing's changing because I'm sitting on my ass doing nothing and daydreaming and I'm not addressing anything. So I go from this high performer person that's just go, 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 making money, 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 and, adoring my job, adoring my life, doing things, traveling, doing all these high profile things, these really cool things, to sitting on my ass on the sofa, popping anti-anxiety meds and drinking wine, not telling a soul what's going on with me because I don't know how to do it. And I'm too embarrassed to tell anybody what's going on with me because I think that I'm a big loser now. And so a friend comes over and says to me some magic words. And the magic words, Chris, were, Christine, get off your ass. And I said, okay, get off my ass and do what? And then he said a couple other magic words. He says, go to Alaska. Now this is really confusing to me. Because get off my ass and go to Alaska when I'm sitting on the sofa, doing nothing, being very comfortable, then all of a sudden intrigues me because it was so different. And I go to my computer and I look and I because I knew I was aware I was in a funk. I was in a crazy funk and I couldn't do anything that was normal to other people. I had to do something so outrageous. So I Google adventure in Alaska. And God delivers, the universe delivers, right in front of my face comes beginning mountaineering course. Now, I never dreamt of climbing mountains, but I was a skier. I was an avid downhill skier and I was really good at skiing. And I said, well, what's the difference? I can go do that. So I called the phone number and I said to them, what do I got to do? And they said, well, besides pay your money, you need to be physically fit, emotionally fit, and mentally fit. Now, I had, I gave three big fibs of being emotionally fit, mentally fit, and I was somewhat physically fit, but not for climbing mountains. But I had age on my side. And so I said, okay, cool, but I have two conditions. And they said, well, I said, my conditions is I want to know when my cell phone work on this thing called like this glacier mountaineering thing. And they said, nope. I said, okay, condition 1, because I didn't want anybody to call me. I said, condition 2, when I start screaming, crying, whining that I don't want to do this anymore, are you going to let me out of my commitments? They said, nope. Once you're up there, you're done. You're committed. And I'm like, cool, here's my credit card. And so anyways, I come back to my friend, like he's still waiting in the living room. And I'm like, I'm going mountaineering now. And he's like, okay, you're on your ass. You got off your ass. And like, how high are you that now you're going to climb mountains? I'm like, here's my credit card. And here's a list that they just said I got to go get because I'm leaving in 2 weeks. And he's like, do you realize that you're sitting, what you've been doing and what you're going to go do now? I'm like, I don't know, but this is what I'm going to go do now. Thanks. Go get my stuff. And he's like, you should come in. I'm like, no, I got to get back to the sofa. And so I'm like this woman on the couch that just has this persona of like all my conditioning. I would throw money at this. Okay, I'm good. But it did get me out, and I did start training a little bit. And I mean, my training was doing kickboxing with a hardcore Marine, to whip my butt. And my friend is, there's mountains. You're in the flatlands of Chicago. And so anyways, now all of a sudden everybody around me is like, how the hell in the world does she go from working in corporate, having this magical life, functioning a certain way, to the sofa, to popping pills, drinking wine, to now she's going mountaineering and climbing mountains. Now this is really bizarre, because then all of a sudden I show up in Alaska, and Chris, let me tell you, is folks didn't even know what to do with me. They made fun of me, which I understand why the Alaskans did, and I would have made fun of me too. When I first arrived, I had this big bag of stuff that I could barely carry, but I expected somebody else to carry my load. And I had these long fake nails. I was a bleach blonde. I was like, well, I'm going mountaineering, everybody. And this chick is going to kill herself. But here's the magic. And that with what happened, there was a whole gamut of things that happened. But what's most important for this story is on my 7th day. Obviously, I didn't kill myself. I lost a lot of weight. Everybody wants to lose weight. Go camp out in the middle of like 20 to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body will lose weight very fast. Lost 20 pounds in 7 days. And you can eat you can eat all the crap you want to eat. I got to experience life where you just scoop up snow, melt it, you drink it. It's so pure. And anyways, the rest of the group, small group, is climbing a second mountain. I was told to sit in base camp and wait for a commuter plane. Now, most people, including me, never knew what life would be like so quiet in the middle of nowhere. And it's so vast, so pure, and not have a soul to ask when it's a plane coming. And is the rest of the group even coming back? So I sat there with the sun beating on me. And another thing, a misnomer for people, is that when it's 20 degrees and sunny, you're that close to the equator, you can get the best suntan. So it has nothing to do with how hot it is outside the air. So I was having the best suntan of that week that I ever had in my life. And sitting there still with my journal, and it was the first time in my life that all of a sudden God, our divine creator, knocks on Christine West's door and literally says to me, Christine, I have you finally quiet. And I'm sitting there, and I knew the voice of God. But I was very cocky. I was a businesswoman, big business, into big business. And God says to me, I'm going to show you something. And this was shown in my consciousness, how everything in the world that I was complaining about, that I thought was so huge and so impossible to solve, showed me in my consciousness how in a little bitty nanosecond, I can solve all my personal issues. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And I'm like, you mean this, I thought it would be a lifetime that I would, have to bury my head in the sand. I would be embarrassed for life, be stained for life, flawed for life. And in that bitty moment, it was just a shift in my consciousness and getting risen up in my vibrational consciousness, and I could solve my problems just like that, like not even a second. And I'm sitting there with God because I'm a businesswoman. And I'm like, wow, I want to continue to do that. And God said to me, wait. Um, and he says to me, I'm giving you a glimpse of what you're here for. And I said, wow, a glimpse? A glimpse. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What's a glimpse? Because I don't know what a glimpse is. And God said to me, well, I'm showing you your divine purpose. And I said, well, what does that mean? Because again, I'm back in a space that I don't understand emotions. I don't understand mindset. I don't understand all this stuff. I was trained in sales. So I'm bargaining with God. Like, what does this mean? Come on, show me the deal. And God's showing me, well, if you follow this glimpse, I'm going to help you grow in to this, into your divinity, so that you're helping other people to love more of what they do, to align themselves to their own purposes, to be able to articulate, to communicate, to understand their emotions, not to be embarrassed, to be better human beings, and all this stuff, to be better leaders, and all this other stuff. And I'm like, wow. And then all these glimpses, this little taste of different things kept coming across my consciousness. And I'm like, what do I have to say? And God said, all you have to do is say yes, and then you need to follow my lead. And I said, well, what does that mean? Because I didn't know what that meant. I know I understand, I understood the words, but this is like big commitment to me. And because I had 2 feet in 2 rivers, I was acting on impulses. I was acting, in a very different mannerism that I do. And I said, well, what if I don't want to do it? And God said, you don't have to do it. You can just go back to sleep, go back to your complaints, go back to the world go back to whatever it is that you think is so problematic and so big, and just go be one of those people. You already know that person. And I said, and then, it was where, like, it was almost like the book of Deuteronomy coming across to me. I said, well, what does that mean? And God said, I said, is there like fairy dust that I get to just do right now? He says, no, like, just like in the book of Deuteronomy, you follow my lead in obedience, and then I show you the way. Mm-hmm. I show you the way, and you keep taking action. I will give you the words. You follow my words to act. Now, I still, because I'm human and my ego was big enough back then that I was like, you mean that you just don't like go voila? and God said to me, I gave you the 2 things. It's up to you. And I said, hang on, let me just write this all down in my journal. So I was making a divine contract with the Lord, with God, our creator. And I said, well, what if I don't want to do it again? And he goes, I totally said to you, it's that simple. Say no, and the conversation's over. But I was so high in my consciousness and seeing what there was to see, what the possibilities for my life, that all of a sudden I just shouted out and I said, yes! And the conversation was over. The commuter plane came. And I was like, wow. And then what happened was I get in the plane, and the whole ride down, I'm just writing. And I get back to land, and now here I am a week later in the southeast of Alaska. The town was Haines, Alaska, which is not where I live. I live in Anchorage, Alaska today. Is all of a sudden the people, the community, viewed me so differently because I was different in 7 days. I was 20 pounds skinnier. I obviously needed a shower. All my nails were broken. I was now more human. And then I was invited and included in them asking me to do things based on how Alaskans live. Now, this is before 9/11. This is the summer of 2001. And so you can call the airline and switch your flight anytime you wanted, and without a charge. So the Alaskans at that time were having fun with me. How many times a day can I change my airline flight? Because then I went fishing. I caught my first king salmon the very next day, which was really cool. Yeah, and I'm going to show folks a picture. Just hang on one second here, Chris. This is really cool. I want to show you the woman who was in that. You guys can still hear me. Here with me.
That is beautiful.
That was me. That was my first king salmon that I caught. That was me in 2001. Okay. So the cool thing is I stayed in Alaska about 30 days longer than originally planned. But I knew that I had responsibilities back in Chicago. Like I had a corporate job. I had properties. I had I had a relationship that I was in. I had all kinds of things. And now I realized I had to go face things. But new me had to go face these things and go clean up messes, my own mess. I knew that God planted in me the business that I do today, which is the Business MD, with helping people and helping leaders be better communicators, guide, help them with their own emotional journey to connect better with people, etc. But when I went back the summer of 2001, I had this brand new superpower. I wasn't the same woman who left. So here we are, approximately 6 weeks later. I was a brand new human being. And I didn't have all the fears, the anxiety, the stress, the things that made me sick, the things that made me mediocre. All of a sudden, I could communicate. I could ask for what I wanted without fear or repercussion. And as soon as I walked in my house, I saw the deadbeat dude that I was with, and I'm not saying it was the easiest thing to get rid of him, because it wasn't. He wasn't willing to just say, okay, it's not working, bye. Mm-hmm. And then I remember when I walked back into the corporation, I was viewed as somebody that, because I was no longer bought into the Kool-Aid, I was dangerous, but I had this brand new superpower because they could no longer control me. And I was unplugged from the matrix. And I realized that when you carry the divinity of God, your bright light, you don't have to be mean to people. You don't have to cut people down. You just need to walk tall and emanate who you are. And so I realized what I no longer wanted to participate in, what was no longer important to me. Even though all this conditioning that once upon a time was important, it was no longer important. What was important was following what God instructed me to do. And I always thought that I was going to go back to Chicago and start my business, but I could not start my business in the environment that made me sick. I'm not saying my message is not that intentionally anybody tried to make me sick. They didn't. They were doing the best that they could based on what they knew how to do. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I was awakened. And I needed to take this journey. And so when you have God on your side and when God is your partner, all of a sudden things start lining up when you're obedient. It's when we're not obedient is when things start acting crazy. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean this in any type of religious way, because I'm the most non-religious person out there, folks. I'm a rebel. I am a person who I realized through the divinity of God, through the divinity of Jesus Christ, that it was far more of Just like when Jesus said to the Pharaohs, I will rebuild this in 3 days. They're like, ha, 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 no, you won't. Well, he did. Well, he was rebuilding me. Now, it didn't take just 3 days because that would have been fairy dust. Because that would have been fairy dust. Okay. So there was a lot of things that I did or I didn't do. But the point is that I cleaned up my messes in Chicago and then I arrived in Alaska. And I'm not claiming that going off and being an entrepreneur was something that I arrived on the Alaska scene in 2002 saying, here I am, I'm opening for business. I'm not claiming that because because that would not be true. I stayed in my comfort zone. I stayed in what I knew how to do to earn a living. And then finally, when that door finally shut, and God explained to me why it needed to shut, and I needed to go and do what he instructed me to do, that's when the real journey. And so part of growth, spiritual growth, personal growth, is that we all have a story. And I'm not claiming that there was ever fairy dust. All I'm saying is that in my journey and my story was to be a human being and to experience what then once I started learning and went back to school and started studying psychology and started, different modes of psychology. And then did the master's and doctorate back to back, and then also realized that it wasn't about academia that made me what I was. It was a framework that started it, but it was through that spiritual consciousness of living and experiencing and failing and learning the wisdom from failing, but also being really human and realizing through my failures is what got me to really start learning about emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence and consciousness. And then so I started down that path, is which is really, today, which is I'm best known for in the emotional intelligence space, how to better communicate and, things of that nature. Because if you're a leader, you need to touch people's emotions. You need to inspire people to want to follow you. If you're in a sticky, stuck situation like I was, you're going to need to be able to communicate that, first of all, to yourself and to get unstuck. And I've been stuck. I've gotten unstuck and I've gotten restuck. But I realized in those learning lessons, every time you up level, there's a whole new set of dimensions that, as far as, okay, this is a little bit harder level. It's just like when I first arrived and moved in Alaska, I used to go out hiking and I'd be freaked out because I'd be like, well, I'm going to get lost in the woods. How does anybody know where they're at? Well, now stick me in the woods and I'm like, I know exactly where I am. Because my intuition has developed so much, not because I went to school for this, because the divinity of God helped me and through nature and expansion. Where now it's like, cool, I used to never know how to read a river. Now I know how to read a river. Now I understand how to, communicate in ways that I never knew how to communicate in. And it has to do with emotions, energy. And I recognize in my story is that, sometimes we need to be rejected, pushed away. But I also had to see where I was rejecting myself or places I outgrew. And I needed to learn how to be more graceful. And so in my story is really about how to be a better human being. Mm-hmm. And to realize that every human being has a story, and every human being out there is doing the best they can. And we all make mistakes, because I've made all kinds of crazy mistakes. And it is true, in my experience anyways, God doesn't pick people who are perfect. God picks people who are the most flawed. Mm-hmm. And it's in those flaws that you are able to relate to other people, because I recognize that I'm just calling the avatar of who I used to be, the avatar of the woman on the couch. And that woman on the couch didn't know how to communicate. She may have had a big fat bank account, but that's really about, but she was emotionally bankrupt. She was insecure. She was somebody that was faking it till she made it.
Mm-hmm.
She was doing things based on what somebody else told her was a definition of what to do. And it wasn't until the divinity of God in me trusting in that, no matter what the outer circumstances looked like. So that's a lot of my story, Chris. So questions, comments.
I've loved every minute of it. Oh my God, you just blow my mind. Christine, thank you so much for sharing that. But I got to ask you for this. When you were talking about first going, taking that hiking trip and going into the mountains and everything, and then you saw those other people going to hike that second mountain.
Mhm.
I know this is going to be hindsight 2020 kind of question, but I really would love to know. Did you ever thought about going up that second mountain?
Um, no, because I knew that with what I came into that environment for, it was complete. It wasn't that I wasn't not invited. I registered for a 7-day trip. They registered for an 11-day trip.
Mm-hmm.
And I trusted, this is kind of a weird answer because there's certain awarenesses to ourselves and there's certain lack of awareness that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I had, remember I said when I was sitting on the couch, I was aware enough that I needed something outrageous to get me out of that funk.
Right.
I knew that I could. I mean, yeah, okay. When my friend said go to Alaska, I was like, whatever. I mean, for me, a cruise would have been boring. I'm not discounting anybody who goes on Alaskan cruises.
Right.
For me, it would have just been like there's a godzillion people. They're just doing mundane things that I could care less about. That would be me. Now, Alaska's beautiful, but I needed something where I was one with the elements. I needed something that was, I was outside of my comfort that I could not control.
Mm-hmm.
I was not going to be in charge of. I came from an environment of these big corporations where I felt through their brand power. And that new environment, I was powerless. So it was as though that environment is what I needed to strip away all the ego like overlays of nonsense that I bought into at once upon a time of what it was like small p power. What God introduced me to was big P power. I recognized that everything that I did on that glacier was I was the weakest link. As the weakest link, and this is important for conversations with humanity. Just because I may have had the most money made me the weakest link in my performance in that environment. I couldn't throw money at the problem. I had to, it was my first true introduction in this particular, it was being reminded of things that were already in me that I suppressed, how to handle human problems. And I'll give you some things I'm laughing about. Because of who I was back then, 2001, when I saw 3 tents, there was 5 of us that were participants of class and 2 guides. I saw 3 tents. I was thinking the 2 other couples, they'd have their little tent. And I was like, oh, the guy's got another tent. They'll just, set up, my tent. They said, nope, to me, you pick which two people you're sleeping with. So for me, it was like, I'm sleeping with strangers. And to me, these tents were labeled as 3-person tents. To me, they were 1-person tents. I mean, I own tents today that are like, wait a minute, this is a 1-person tent with all my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it was also to the other people was me having to say to them, I know that you all planned on your own story in this tense, and like the one couple, they were doing up to shenanigans. They were married to other people. They were there having their affair. So I first said, okay, how about this? I'm gonna hang out with you two for half the week, and then you two for the other half of the week. So I had to adjust my brain to all these different scenarios. I mean, everything I was uncomfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to the degree of, if you're used to plumbing, okay, we take for granted, most of us take for granted that you go to a restaurant, and so now you're doing your business outside. Where do you do it? We built a snow, it was called a snow groovers, a snow restroom. We built a snow kitchen. It was things that it was where, when you're on belay with people, you're all one. So the weakest link to the strongest link, and anybody in between affects each other. So when we were practicing going up the first mountain, I had rental boots that, I don't know, they started hurting my feet really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the guide shouted, does anybody have this size boot that they can switch with Christine? Another, person on the trip, she had the same size feet, newer boots, and she's, I'll switch. She had to give me her new boots that she planned on using and use the rental boots. So in the context of things, it was this reality, this consciousness of this no longer of this is mine and you can't have it. It was in this environment, what do you need in this moment? And it's not that I'm going to need this in 2 days. It's like right now, this is what you need right now. And it was an environment where things showed up. So even like in this spirit, I'm laughing about what let's say. So asking questions, well, what about food? Well, we brought enough food. Well, then, the Coast Guard eventually, like airplanes above us, and there was other teams out there, they would drop from the sky like a bag of stuff that, like, okay, here's more supplies for you. So things do fall out of the sky, folks. You just have to be in the right environment. So here you are, all things that you may sit there and say, well, I don't want that to eat. On the day that I was going down and the group was going to go climb that other mountain, you know what was valuable? And this is really funny about that. I literally, to the people that were still there, we made a trade because I wanted to take pictures. I ran out of film. We didn't have smartphones. There's no electricity. Okay. So back in 2001, you're taking, pictures with an actual camera.
Right.
And so I traded what was important to them at the time. They had extra film. I had extra soap for film. You want to feel, now you're going to be on this environment for even more days without a shower. So you got to take a snow shower the best you can.
Right.
Okay. So it was just a different world. It was a glimpse into, no matter how different we were, we all this commonality that we wanted to have the best enjoyable trip possible, the best experience possible.
And I love that, but I got to ask you this because I've never been mountaineering ever in my life. I've done a couple of hikes before, but I got to ask you this. What's it like to actually be out in the woods? And of course, you have no electricity, no. Yes, I won't say you don't have water because you do, because the snow is literally water in itself. But like you said just a second ago about taking a snow shower, how was life literally on that mountain? I mean, you got to give me kind of like inside baseball. How did it really look?
Okay, this is so many cool things. Okay, because the weather changes. So if you have a really sunny day, just think about Okay, base camp where we were at was about 4,000 feet up from downstairs. So you're upstairs 4,000 feet up. And on a sunny day, you can see clearly, and Alaska is very vast. Yeah. Now, and so this is my first time. So folks, I've been here 22 years. So my vision is adjusted to how far something is. I'm going back to who I was in 2001. So a mile or 2 miles or 5 miles or 10 miles looked very close up to me. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now my eyes have adjusted because I've been here long enough that I can sit there and tell you, nope, that's like 20 miles away. But back then, the perception, my eyes were not trained yet. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, here's the other thing was I understand because everybody's perception of snow is it's cold. Mm-hmm. But now I'm going to tell you something's going to blow your mind. When you pack snow and you build things with snow, it's warm. It's your shelter. Mm-hmm. Okay. And when you're in an untapped, uninhibited place where snow comes, it's rain from the sky, the snow comes from the sky, and the only thing that's up there is maybe an occasional bird, or there's ice worms, which ice worms are a good form of protein. I drank them and ate them. Didn't matter. I mean, you just have a different perspective on it. So you have in hiking, this is why when you go to the hiking store, wherever store is yours, in Florida is, so that's why you have like these thermoses that are good for cold and hot. Mm-hmm. So you scooping up snow, and if it's 20 degrees Fahrenheit, I know to somebody in Florida sounds like, oh my God, that's freezing. 20 degrees where I was at with the sun coming down, you're so much closer to the equator. That was warm if the sun was out. So you're just taking your lighter, at the time, you just take your lighter and you melt it and drink it up. And it was like, wow, why are people paying so much for glacier water? All I have to do is scoop this up. So think about the earth in movies that we see back in, the Wild Wild West. People just go up the stream and they scoop it up and they drink. Because there's no contamination. Okay, so what else was it like? Now, here's another visual for you. I remember there was one day when we were really learning about being on belay and using our ice, our ice picks and everything, how to pull ourselves up. The cloud line was coming down on us. And so because we're in the clouds, I couldn't even see my hand in front of me.
Wow.
Okay, so now it was, wow. Now you have to learn how to trust that my senses, I can't see, but I have to hear people around me and I have to feel my way. Mm-hmm. And still recognize that because I can't see, how do I trust to get myself a short distance back to that tent, back to base camp where we're safe? And here's the other thing, is in that environment, as much as I could be a rebel and I like to sometimes, I'm just going to go off on my own and go try this and go explore this. I had to learn how to trust the guides to say, you follow in our steps we're experienced. So again, I came from this pre-training and that's what God said to me. Now follow my steps. So I had to learn when I can't see to follow in God's steps. Now, I'm not saying everybody got this out of this experience. They didn't. This was my experience. I'm not saying people go mountaineering and they get this experience. This is me. When you're ready for something to happen, for change, for liberation, for really to go through your journey, to live how you're called to live, where your soul is saying, hey, I can't do this anymore over here. And that's what's really going on. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to go go mountaineering. I just had to do something so outrageous because I didn't want to be distracted by the phone. I didn't want people to start saying things to me that I knew or having. If they did call, I would get to it later. I would get to it when I was downstairs, when I use the term downstairs, down on land where the cell phone worked. I needed to say goodbye and shed the skin of who I once was. I wanted to get off the couch and start living again.
And I got to ask you this, Christine. And I know probably a lot of people have asked you before, but for our audience, I really would love to ask you this. And you've kind of alluded to a certain degree because you talked about perception just a little bit ago. But did that trip that you first took to Alaska not only change your perception of the world, but
Uh-huh.
maybe change the perception of who you were?
Oh, absolutely. Would it help me to be introduced to? Okay, what I'm about to say, I believe that most people have this perception. When I was living in Chicago, I viewed Chicago as the center of the universe. What happened in Chicago was we get to dictate whatever we're dictating. And so the thing is that in that arena, my perceptions of what was safe, what could actually be accomplished, I no longer was in this place of buying into that all the conditioning that I had. So my perceptions of life opened up. I never knew it was possible to go fishing and catch a fish. I just thought some other people did that. I didn't even like eating fish. Okay. I didn't even like it. Fish smelled to me. Fish was something that it was like, get away from me. But here I was, all of a sudden, my diet's changing. The way that I was opening up to allow other people in my world, and not from the perspective that I was trained to or conditioned to. I was having conversations that I never had before.
That is amazing, Christine. And Chris, good afternoon, sir. How you doing this afternoon?
We're doing good. How about you?
Doing well, sir. Glad that you can join us. I know you've probably been watching and tuning in and everything like that. Do you have any questions or comments for Christine today?
I'm running a little late. I was just wondering how she survived that being out there. That was amazing just to hear. I'm coming in late just to hear just about the end. And having a little difficulties over here with the internet, but I mean, just to hear what she was talking about. How did she survive that? Is what I was wondering. That was wild to hear her say that they used the snow to drink water. I mean, how did that seem to taste though? I mean, what was the taste from like?
Well, I, if you've never tasted clean, pure water, uh, untapped, it. I know it sounds strange because nice to meet you, Chris. In most
Nice to meet
people's
you.
um, configure conscious configuration of things or how things are supposed to be, it almost was. This is weird to me because I grew up in Chicago. Snow was something that you do stuff in or prevented you from driving down the street. It created traffic jams, okay, or traffic accidents. That was snow to me. And it was also because I was an avid skier, it was to ski on. But living in mountaineering, learning a beginner's basic class to mountaineering was it opened my soul up to the world, a natural world of the possibilities of all the wonderful creations man has created, but yet at the same time, how mankind has pushed away what's so natural and divine and clean.
Wow.
And so I got to experience, and I still to this day, when there's other places in Alaska that I have visited that are on the road system, that there's still people who live off of saying, well, please don't contaminate our river. Don't go walk in our river because we drink, the water's still so pure.
Really?
I know that's hard to fathom. All right. Because I don't know where you live, Chris, but I live in the city of Anchorage. Somebody came to visit me and said to me, "Wow, this is from Chicago," and said, "Well, it's pretty clean in Anchorage." I said, and my comment was, "No, it's not." And she said, "Yes, it is. We'll compare it to Chicago. It is." But then I took her someplace that was about 100 miles from here, and I said, "Now this is pure. Now I'm bringing you into." I'm going to show you a glacier, and I'm going to show you things that now you're going to be able to breathe in clean air. And she's like, wow, now I can see it. But if you've never experienced it, I don't know how to introduce it to your senses. And I'm being honest and transparent. But if I go into, like, so for example, if I'm in an environment and I say, for example, if I go visit Chicago and I say, oh, this stinks, or this food is bleh, and people say to me, you know what you're talking about. Well, to them, I don't. They're not wrong. It's just that they've never been introduced to something that's pure. But when you taste it, it's like why I don't eat farm raised fish. I know what it tastes like to have a fish that I just caught, and then all of a sudden eat it, like prepare it and eat it like within the hour. That's fresh fish. The other day, I went to a friend's garden who invited me to, and I just picked, some potatoes right out of the ground and some lettuce and cabbage and some other stuff. And I went home and I prepared it. And the taste of it being so fresh compared to like literally something that is store bought, when you know the difference, your palate says, wow, this is clean. But most people do not understand the difference and have accepted things in their perception of things. It's not that you're wrong, because I don't want to look life that way, because people are not right or wrong. I just look at it as you just haven't experienced it, just like I never experienced it. And I bought into the crap that what I was doing back then, it was the center of the universe.
Wow.
And I don't go on glaciers, every single day of my life. I mean, yes, I hike. I don't want to paint the picture of that, but I'm using this metaphor of my story, how I began. And it's something that helped me to reshape my inside, my consciousness.
So that was a big change for you, and you're changing a big change for your life.
Yes, and if I could do it, you can do it.
I had a big change 46 years ago.
Beautiful.
Boy, I live in Louisiana. I had a big change 46 years ago because I got my rude awakening from God when I had an auto accident. I broke my neck, C2 through C7, and paralyzed me waist down. Stayed 8 months. Make this story short because it's all about you. But I stood 8 months and 2 days in the hospital, and Tuesday night, the doctors didn't think I was going to make it, and then a blood clot hit me, and the doctors pronounced me dead, and then I survived that, and the doctor says only 1%, and I was only the 1% to survive a blood clot because God showed me what life was about. So I had a rude awakening, and I had a big.
But that's the point. Really, the point of my story is that if God puts us in these situations, and it's really up to us to answer the call.
Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes, I call it, we have one of these called a cell phone called a cell phone, that
Right.
God calls us intuitively or sits us down, where, like your story is that he sat you down. Now, I'm sure if you knew that that was coming, you wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to sign up to be in the hospital and break my neck so that I can hear the call.
Right. No, I think the biggest blame is not because what happened. It's not God showed me a rude awakening, but that the biggest blame is my fault because I didn't listen how life was supposed to be when I was graduating high school, and that was my biggest thing. Is if I had listened to my parents, I could have got an easy way, learned how life was. But I mean, that's how life is. We don't know what God's going to put in front of us, and we have to take that challenge. And I learned that there's a perspective way of doing life, and I learned it, you know, and I learned so, and
That's
that's
beautiful.
yes, ma'am, and that's why I have my rooms is trying to get parents to understand and make their children graduating high school that even walking or being in that automobile is just as dangerous. Fooling with something is not feasible. Keep your eyes on the road. And because I would have had 46 years with the military, would it have happened if I had been at boot camp? Or did it happen for a reason not to make it there? I don't know, but it happened. So I got my rude awakening. And
Well,
God,
we all have, I think, I personally believe, um, these events, these experiences, we get, in my particular case, I view it as I hit a crossroad. And I'm not saying the road, when I took the road to follow God in my divine purpose, I don't want to leave people saying, oh my God, life just got hunky dory, got so simple. Um, no, it didn't. Because being an entrepreneur is not simple.
Mhm.
And it's, you got to choose what's going to give you your life purpose. And depending on some people, in my opinion, I mean, some people are not ready. A lot of people probably still say, no, God, I'm not going to do it.
and God is our teacher. We got to realize God's the teacher. He's controlling our lives, and we got to realize that. And that's how I got my rude awakening because I realized this too, Mr. Chris, that if, I've never have been a drinker or drink alcohol. But if I was drinking alcohol and fooling with this radio and lost control, and I would have hit some innocent young driver or an elderly people, injured them or took in their life, what would I have to live with for the rest of my life? And that was my real call. Is I thank God that I wasn't a drinker and I wasn't drinking alcohol. I played music, but just fooling because didn't listen because my dad did the same thing and I didn't listen. But if I would have listened, I could have been. Maybe it would have, and maybe it wouldn't, but it would have been doing it in a perspective way. And God showed me that.
Well, there you go. Yay. Yay. What part of the world are you in? Not, I know where Chris Berryman is in Florida. Where are you, Chris?
Louisiana, USA. I live in Hammond, Louisiana.
See, this is cool. Christine, Chris. Can we have more Chris's or Christines show up?
We will have another Chris Fest pretty soon. Just saying that will be there again.
Well, my name's Christopher, but they call me Chris.
Okay, Christopher, Chris, and Christine. This is
So
cool.
yeah, my LinkedIn account is I just put it Chris because everybody calls me Chris. Nobody calls me Christopher. So yeah.
Thank you for your inspiration. I know many former opportunities were due to divine orchestration. It's great to have a reminder to be listening. Awesome, Laura. Connect with me on LinkedIn, please.
And
Yeah.
please connect with me too as well. I'm so humbled and honored that you're able to join in to the conversation and watch it. And I definitely would love to have an offline conversation with you about Christine's story and so much more. Thank you so much. Uh, But I want to go to you, Chris, before we close out the call. And what's your big takeaways from Christine's story today?
That's a good question, Mr. Chris, because I came in late. I know I learned a lot. That amazing that what we can do is if we put our minds and body and souls together. And I feel what she did was an amazing thing. She changed her life and turned her life around to understand what she can uh, collaborate and do what she needed to do and come back to be herself. And that's an amazing thing, And I think that's my biggest point is that changed my whole life after my accident. That we need to really come to reality with ourselves and start doing everything from this heart and listening to what our heart says. And I think uh, that was, an amazing what she did.
Well,
That's
Chris,
sweet.
thank you so much for that. That was very powerful. And always thank you so much for showing up as you do. We greatly appreciate you so much. And my takeaways is simply this. I will have to go back to what my mother said to me many, many years ago. It's just, and it's so true even today with this conversation, Christine, with your story. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter because it's over mind over matter. Because
Yep.
if you literally put your mind to it, you can do anything and everything in this world, and maybe even say this: the impossible will be possible. Because when you deem it so, it will be. And I have to go back to that Beatles song, "Let It Be." Just let it be, and I truly believe in that too as well. So those are my big takeaways in and of itself. But Christine, you are the guest of the show. We would love to hear your final thoughts and some parting words that can really give a lot of people great inspiration and things, and maybe a way that we can get connected with you and everything. So, Christine, over to you, ma'am.
Well, thank you, Chris. First of all, it's an honor. It's been an honor since we met some months ago in getting to know you, Chris. But the biggest part, folks, that I like to leave you with, if you feel stuck, no matter if it's, to you, it may be perceived as something huge, get support, the right support to get unstuck in guidance from somebody that can help you. There's nothing, and in my particular case, I was stubborn. I didn't know what to do in my story back in 2001. But the biggest thing is when you really know that you're called to do something bigger, trust God. I didn't say trust in God. I said trust God.
Amen.
110%.
100%.
And Christine, I've also shared your website on all our platforms on Facebook, LinkedIn, and also YouTube today. And we're just so humbled and honored that you are a part of our great and growing community and movement that is bringing humanity together. And I truly believe when we share our story, there's no right way or wrong way to do it. We just got to be willing enough and able enough to just come out and share it and just share it with the world, because it might be that one person, just like Laura, who can be able to say, thank you for your inspiration. I know that many of my former opportunities were due to the divine orchestration. It's always great to have a reminder to be listening. And yes, when we're just willing to listen and just take things in for what they are and see what's actually before us, I truly believe it can be a transformational opportunity for all of us when we just allow that to be. So, Christine, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you put up Laura's comment? I want to take a picture of it. That's good. One more time for me. Thank you. That's good. Yeah. Thank you, Laura. Yeah, that's great. It's something, folks, God is always talking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really about taking the pause to just listen. And I want to leave listeners just with one last thing, Chris, if I may.
Sure.
Conversations with God, and this is just my version because I know there's books out there about conversations with God. My experience are not about like begging God and saying, come fix me, come fix this, blah, 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 blah. It's really about being human and more saying to God, lead my steps so through you, with you, to solve fill in the blank for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's up to you,
Alrighty.
human being, to do the action steps.
Yeah.
And I invite folks to connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's continue the conversation. I'm open to, doing private Zooms with folks to get to know people. Thank you, Chris and Chris.
Absolutely. Again, I truly believe in these conversations, uh, because I truly believe not only can a conversation can call us to act, Christine and Chris, it can also call us to connect. And Laura, I would love to have a great and engaging conversation with you, and I'm sure Christine too as well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us today. And to all of the people who are watching, whether to be live or on a replay, thank you so much for even sharing your day with us. And again, we would love to have you come share your story on Conversation for Humanity. Here's how you can do that. Go to calendly.com at guest BHT/CFH. And we would love for you to come share your story with us on Conversation for Humanity. And if you want even to know more about bringing humanity together, please reach out to me or to my great friend, Keith Kuperman, which actually will tag him in the event page of today's call. So you guys will reach out to him too as well. We would love to have a one-on-one with you and be part of our great and growing community and movement that is bringing humanity together. So from all of us here at Bringing Humanity Together and Adaptive Strategies Group, thank you so much, Christine and Chris, for sharing your day with us. Looking forward to speaking and collaborating with all of you guys very soon. You guys have a wonderful Wednesday. Make your day and have an amazing day.
God bless you all. Thanks for having me.